This episode contains spoilers for Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, the movie. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cinephile Gamers podcast. I am your host, Bo Smith. I did not go out to the movies this weekend. I actually got to stay home and watch a brand new movie on Disney Plus. You might have heard about it already. It's called Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, the movie. And this, if you don't know, is kind of a reboot, comeback story, a whole original idea of the original Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Ranger TV show. That's a show that came out in the 90s that was on Disney Afternoons that I grew up with along with, DuckTales and other types of shows of that nature. And this is one of the movies I was actually really looking forward to recently whenever it was announced because Rescue Rangers is something I grew up with after coming home from school, getting to watch it on television. And this was, like I said, something I was really looking forward to. It has an all-star cast too. It stars John Mulaney as Chip, Andy Samberg as Dale. You also have appearances from Seth Rogen, J.K. Simmons, and some of the original voice actors from the show, including Tress MacNeille, Corey Burton, playing a couple of small key parts, but not actually being Chip and Dale themselves. And there's a whole lot of other people that also star in this movie as different characters that you might see popping up throughout as voices. There's also some cameo appearances, which I might get into a little bit later in the spoiler territory of the part. It was directed by Akiva Schaffer, who, if you don't know, is part of the Lonely Island group. Andy Samberg, also being a member, makes this a Lonely Island film, technically, I guess, because Jorma Taccone also voices some bit parts in the movie. Now, while I am excited that this movie did come out, upon initial watching of the trailer, I was a little nervous about everything, just because it was one of those reboot types of movies, and throughout the trailer they're saying, it's not a reboot, we don't want a reboot of the show, but it kind of is that sort of, according to the poster, it's not a reboot, it's a comeback story. And I have to agree with that in some parts, but it is, I will say, a reboot of a series that kind of plays into some of its old show elements at some parts, which it's not just directly ripping off the show, but it actually pays homage to the show. We'll get into that a little bit. So let's start off with the beginning of the movie. So you are greeted to Dale's interaction, and he is at this fan con type of Comic-Con convention thing where he's helping sign autographs and trying to earn money, trying to boost back his career, and he is not in his normal look. He had a 3D procedured surgery, kind of like how you see the Lion King or the Jungle Book, how those animals have gone through 3D surgeries, and that's what he looks like now, while Dale still stays in that 90s counterpart outfit, the hand-drawn animation sort of thing. But anyways, Dale is talking to his fans via some sort of app where he just communicates with an online fan base. And he's kind of talking about, how everything got started with them, how Chip and Dale, they met originally in grade school, became friends, decided to move to Hollywood together, played in some small bit roles like you see where they're just inserted into an episode of Full House, which was such a funny part of it. And then eventually they're offered their own show, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. And it shows a little bit of the filming of that and how they were just huge stars of the early 90s. You even get to see them partying with different cartoon characters like Roger Rabbit at one point, which a great nod. You haven't seen Roger Rabbit in forever, and I love that movie. And then we find out that Dale is going to be leaving the show because he wants to have his own lead role. He's tired of playing second banana. So he's going to star in Double O Dale, which is a James Bond ripoff. And he goes on to say, the Rescue Rangers got canceled, and then Double O Dale got canceled after one episode. It cuts to Chip where we see him selling life insurance now. He's not even pursuing any more Hollywood gigs. He has just a regular job now. He's a regular person, I guess. But you see him in this life insurance agency trying to sell life insurance to a Serta sheep. It was what it reminded me of from those mattress commercials. And then this world that they both live in, it's kind of like a Roger Rabbit scenario where it's a world lived in both by cartoons and humans. They all interact with each other. So in his office, it's a bunch of different cartoon characters. You see some human characters inviting him out to go for a lunch party or a dinner party. And he's like, nope, I got to go home. I got to go see Millie. And Millie is this dog that he takes care of. He lives by himself in this tiny house that's big enough for him and the dog. And whenever he gets home, he sees a voicemail from Monterey Jack, one of the co-stars of Rescue Rangers, and he says, "I need your help. Please come to my house." He goes over there, and Monterey Jack says he's gotten back into cheese. And for those who are not familiar with the show, Monterey Jack, if he smelled, those wavy lines of like a smelly cheese or like food or something, he would just immediately be enamored by it. It's almost like a drug addiction for him. So he says, "I got back into the cheese." And he says, "I owe money to this gang, and if I don't, they're gonna take me and they're gonna put me in bootleg movies." And the owner of this gang, his name is Sweet Pete, and he takes he's been abducting these cartoon characters and has been like altering their appearances, and then you see him get shipped out and sent over to these other countries for bootleg Disney movies or anything like that. You get a flashback to Flounder being abducted by this gang of people, and he's given a different design entirely, and you see him put on a movie poster for The Little Fish Lady Under the Sea, which is a Little Mermaid ripoff movie. Dale's also invited by Monterey Jack into his house because he also wants Dale's help. And so Chip and Dale, they finally reunite after, I guess, 20 years of not seeing each other. You can tell tension's awkward. Chip is not necessarily forgiving Dale and everything, but Dale seems to think it's okay because Chip's like, "It's all good. Okie dokie artichoke." And they're like, "Okay, if you say so." But after they leave from there, they both get a phone call that Monterey Jack has been kidnapped. And so as they're talking to the police detectives who say, "Well, if he's been abducted by the bootlegger gang, then there might not be much we can do to actually save him because we've been given the slip a few different times," and all these other things of, they're covering their tracks. We can't get any evidence on them, that sort of thing. And so Chip and Dale take it upon themselves that, hey, we got to go find our friend, see if we can rescue him, and maybe bring these other cartoon characters to justice. And so that's the basic premise of the movie. And of course, Chip is the entire time is just like, this is not Rescue Rangers getting back together. This is just helping a friend out. But of course, throughout all the antics, they start reliving those TV show days and they become closer friends, or they regain that friendship that they once had. So what I really like about this movie is that it is an ode to all these different kinds of animation. Kind of like how I mentioned you get a Roger Rabbit feel from this movie, because it has not just Disney properties, but you have DreamWorks properties, you have Looney Tunes properties, and you also see all these different types of animation styles throughout the movie. Of course, you have the hand-drawn animation, you have the Pixar 3D animation, you have the rubber hose animation of like the 1930s and 40s. You also have these uncanny valley characters like Cats or the Polar Express, that style of animation where you're like, everything is almost lifelike. There's just something you can't put your finger on it though, so it's just, you get this weird vibe from everything. Which I thought was a hilarious moment because Seth Rogen's character, who's this Viking, I don't know if it's from a specific movie, his name is Bob in the movie, but the entire time he's just like looking straight forward and he's like, "I'm looking right at y'all," and of course his eyes are just looking straight ahead at 4 feet high, and Chip and Dale are just like 3 feet below him the entire time. This movie also plays a lot on the themes of reboots and sequels and bringing things back, changing them up a little bit. And it plays heavily into this movie too, where there's a lot of clever jokes written throughout the movie of just saying, yeah, this is something that we're making fun of. And then they also kind of embrace it a little bit through the movie. But I feel like it's presented in a way that you kind of forgive it or you laugh about it because of how well it's done. One of my favorite moments is when early on in the film, Chip is watching Alvin and the Chipmunks. I don't know which movie it is, but they start rapping. And he's like, that's when cartoon characters lose all credibility, is whenever they're brought in and start to rap. And later on in the movie, to like create a distraction, Dale has to do a rap and Chip's like, "Please don't do this. I will lose all respect for you." And then of course Chip has to do it just so Dale can finish out the rest of the plan. And he's just like, "Yep, we've hit a low point." But the rap is just so bad, and it's not like it's trying to be good. They're obviously just trying to ad lib, and they keep saying, "Name is Dale. I would never eat whale," and all they keep saying is whale and whale over again. As far as the voice cast goes, I actually thought everyone did a tremendous job. And of course, this movie is just star-studded with all these different actors either reprising the role or bringing in a new take on some of these characters or actually playing new characters. And of course, it's all good. J.K. Simmons, I thought, has great moments towards the end of the movie. Will Arnett, who plays Sweet Pete, who is actually just a grown-up version of Peter Pan who's become this mobster, is really funny, and I love Will Arnett's comedy style anyway, so it's just such a good fit. Seth Rogen has good moments. He's not overpowering like I thought it was going to be in the trailer, but anytime he does that type of laugh, it does get me going a little bit. You also have, like I had mentioned, some people reprising the roles. Tress MacNeille, who does Gadget in the original TV show, she comes back to play that character. She also does some of the higher-pitched, squeaky chipmunk voices for Chip and Dale, which is what the original actors did. Her and Corey Burton did, is they would just speed up their voices so they would have that chipmunk voice in it, and they could actually do those character voices. That was one thing I was worried about for this movie, is that whenever I saw the trailers initially, it was just John Mulaney, Andy Samberg doing their normal voices. And I feel like for a while now, it has been that way. Obviously, it's been that way for maybe 20 years, where actors who are going into these animated roles, they're not disguising their voices at all. They're just using their regular voice, and that is it. Now, I will give them credit for this, is that John Mulaney, Andy Samberg, they are able to put that emotional weight behind their characters in some good moments, maybe somber moments, heartfelt moments towards the end of the movie, and at the beginning of the movie too. But you don't really get any like character actors anymore, or unknowns that are voicing these roles. It's typically always going to be famous people doing that. That being said, I did get used to the fact that it was John Mulaney's voice, Andy Samberg's voice. I was able to finally just kind of clear it out of my mind. But initially, for maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes, I was just like, I can't really think of Chip and Dale now without thinking of just John Mulaney being in a suit doing a stand-up bit. I will say, I don't know if the movie would have worked out if they had done the chipmunk voice in general. It might have been fine, it might not have been fine, but overall, I was able to get over this. I did enjoy the performances too. As far as other people reprising roles, you do have moments at the Comic-Con where you see Tigra and Lumiere, and they have their original voices as well. You also have He-Man, Skeletor with their original voice. And one that had a new voice was Tim Robinson's character, which, okay, gonna get into spoilers now because this might have been the absolute best part of the movie, and this was like early on in the movie, is while Dale is at the Comic-Con, right across from his booth is Ugly Sonic. The original design for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie is his own character now, and he's just signing things, and people are laughing at him. And the entire time they are riffing off of, just how bad of a design it was. And he's just like, yeah, one look at my teeth and people didn't want to employ me anymore. And then you do see like these slow-mo moments of Chip or Dale just looking at the teeth and just being weirded out by it. They're like, don't look, don't stare. But Ugly Sonic, and that's how they refer to him in this movie, has a few different great moments throughout the movie. And all he's doing is just harping on the fact that he's in talks with doing this show where he's an FBI character. And he's like, you're going to see and you're going to regret ever talking bad about me. That was by far the best moment, is the acknowledgement of how horrible this design is. Like I had mentioned before, this is a cross of all different types of animation. So much like a Roger Rabbit movie or Looney Tunes Back in Action, you do see all these different franchises that come together. Granted, you don't actually see like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck. You see Foghorn Leghorn on a packet of food for like a chicken frozen meal that you could just heat up in the microwave. You do get mentions of like Daffy Duck or anything like that. You don't see like the big Disney stars though, like Mickey Mouse, Goofy, Donald Duck. You get to see Scrooge McDuck at one point. You get to see Cars from the Cars movies. And then you also get great references to other movies too, like the donuts from the Wreck-It Ralph movie, who are also policemen in this movie. And of course, with this being a Disney movie, they make great Disney nod references as well. The fact that the bad part of town is Main Street, and Dale's just saying, oh yeah, that person is selling these types of bootleg things, or this person's selling this. And it's all just these friendly, happy atmosphere characters that you would see at like Disney World on Main Street in the Magic Kingdom. And I also love the different blends of animation together, like with the 3D and the 2D. You even get like puppets at a few different scenes too. And while it's initially just jarring, you do get used to it immediately because of just how well delivered it is and how well it fits into the world too. And some of these puppets have great lines. Keegan Michael Key is one where it's kind of like a play on the Swedish Chef a little bit. He's like a Bjornsson, the cheesemaker, so he has this little Swedish accent. But as soon as they start asking around for stinky cheese, he immediately cuts it and just turns mean. It's just like, yeah, what do you want? Come into the back. I'll sell you some good stuff. That sort of thing. This movie, it knows the tropes and it plays into it, but it's just so well done that you really enjoy it, and you find some of these jokes really cleverly well written too. Along with the idea of reboots, you also have the idea of sequels that are a theme in here, as well as bootlegs. And of course, with the sequels and reboots, you see funny moments early on in the movie where Chip is kind of disgusted with everything in Hollywood, as far as just like, yeah, let's take a movie from the 90s, bring it back. Like there's a movie that he sees a poster for called Mr. Doubtfire, with Meryl Streep playing the lead role, which was a great funny shock moment. And then you also have these different crossover movies like E.T. versus Batman. Then, of course, you have the bootleg movies, which Sweet Pete is trying to convey. And the reason for his motivation is just because he said that he started growing up after the Peter Pan movie and that no one wanted to hire him for anything else. You see that it's still the like same character model, but now he has facial hair. And so he decides just like, if I can't be in movies, I'm going to make movies and I'm just going to sell it to these different markets and I can make a lot of money off of it. And you see different bootleg movies he's made, like Beauty and the Dog Beast, or the Spaghetti Dogs, which is just a lady and the tramp with them like sucking the spaghetti together, but it's obviously not the same two dogs. So it's good all around. It's one of those funny moments that you can see that they're calling Hollywood out on right now too. Or these different markets that try to take IPs that are very well done or so successful and then just introduce it into like these Chinese markets that might not have access to them and just trying to make money off of it in their own way. This movie's runtime is about an hour and a half, so it's not too long, not too short. It feels like the perfect length for everything. And of course, there's lots of good action set pieces throughout the movie, along with those cleverly written things. It does pay homage to the old Chip and Dale show. They talk about certain episodes. There's even certain parts in here that are referenced that are actually put into play. And so it's not like they're just shoving this down your face. It is actually paying homage to the show and actually giving credit where credit is due because they've done a lot of research. Of course, there's a garage full of stuff that Dale has kept onto from the show, where it's all the merchandise, a video game from the NES days, Pogs, if anyone remembers those, like a collection of them that he has kept. If you've never watched Black Nerd Comedy on YouTube, this is that dude's type of movie because he is such a 80s, 90s cartoon nostalgia fan. And I know from his reviews, he was very excited about this movie and he walked away really happy from it. I want to go ahead and finish up the rest of the plot to this movie. I know I've already spoiled a few things, but this is going to be a spoiler warning for the later half of the movie. So if you want that saved for you, go ahead and just pause the video, watch the movie, come back, and I'd be happy to talk about this with you and give you my final thoughts on everything too. So after they have discovered this plot from the bootleg game from Sweet Pete, they are trying to work with the police to solve the rest of this case. There is J.K. Simmons' character, who is like a Gumby clay animation, stop motion animation guy, who is the captain. And then you have a human character, her name is Ellie, who grew up watching Chip and Dale, and she was inspired by them. That's why she wanted to do police work. They find the bad guys' operations, and you actually see a treasure trove of cartoon character traits or character features of these different cartoons throughout, television or movie history. Like you see Jimmy Neutron's hair, you see a Mickey Mouse glove of some sort, you see what I thought was one of the funniest references, because Disney owns the rights to it, is a Keyblade and Sora's hair in there. You don't actually get to see anything Kingdom Hearts related, but I love that nod in there, especially for someone who's a huge fan of that series. But after they have been discovered, Dale is able to escape, but Chip gets captured and is taken back to their lair, where he is about to be experimented on and be thrown into a bootleg movie. So Dale calls in Gadget and Zipper from the show, and they are able to help rescue Chip, and then they destroy this bootlegging machine that changes characters' designs, where Sweet Pete gets all these different design inputs. And this is a really funny thing. I don't know if he's been able to capture all these different characters. If so, that's really scary because some of these characters are really well known. You wouldn't think they would get captured, but you see like a Transformer leg on one leg. You see Woody's boot and jeans. You see a Wreck-It Ralph hand come out with the head of, I think it's one of the Aristocats. I'm not 100% sure. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, but it's just like this giant amalgamation of different characters throughout Disney's history. And of course, he has like these different personality traits from each one. So at one point he says, I'm going to wreck some stuff from Wreck-It Ralph. But eventually they are able to take down Sweet Pete in his amalgamation body character thing. Not before he shoots at Chip, and then Dale jumps in, takes the blow for it. And there's a sweet, heartfelt moment of like, you were never second banana. I always looked up to you, this sort of thing. And then, of course, Dale wakes up and was like, you really cared for me? And then they have this moment where they hug it out. They've buried the hatchet on everything else. And it shows that Dale had pulled out his last Pog that he was looking for his collection that Chip had given to him. And it's just like, yeah, I knew this would come in handy one day. And so they decide that they have buried the hatchet. They are good about things. And of course, Gadget and Zip join them, and they're like, we got to find Monterey, because if they were filming the movies here, he's got to be here somewhere. They were able to find a shipping container where all the bootleg characters have been stolen. And so you see like Sleepy from Sleeping Beauty. You see Flounder, you see Phineas from Phineas and Ferb. They're not their normal self. It's all these different characters that have been altered in some way. And then finally Monterey comes out and he's been Dumbo'd. His mustache had been taken off of him. He's got big Dumbo ears. And so they all rejoice, and Dale's like, I know a guy, we can get you fixed up. And he's like, okay, so everything's good. And then Chip had mentioned, this has been a good reboot. And then Dale's like, oh, you said reboot, so Rescue Rangers are back, right? And he's like, no, we're not back. I'd have to see a script, though, just to make sure if I wanted to actually do Rescue Rangers again. They kind of make that throwaway joke right there. And one of my favorite jokes that they end the movie on is that, yeah, so if we would do this, we would just need to bring back the original theme. Yeah, of course. Why would we not bring back the original theme? Why would we have some pop star do the theme? Nobody wants that. Everyone wants the original. Cuts to credits, it's Post Malone singing the Rescue Rangers theme, which I got a good belly laugh out of. Which his version was good, but, it's not the original Rescue Rangers theme. That song slaps today. I don't care what anyone else says. So, what do I think of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, the movie? Honestly, this is a movie that surprised me. I didn't have a big expectations going to it. I had some expectations, but I also had my reservations on a few things. Overall, I think the themes and the jokes that they prod about for reboots, sequels, while they do fall into some of those tropes, they acknowledge it. And just because you acknowledge something doesn't mean you get a free pass on it. But I feel like the jokes were really well written to where you do kind of join in on everything and it's funny. Obviously, this is going to be a nostalgia factor for some people like myself who grew up on the cartoon, but it's also a movie that's going to be designated for kids. I think this movie is going to be something that kids will enjoy, but it's also going to be something for the adults out there who have children that you're going to like as well too. It has great humor in it. There's going to be some stuff that is joked about that kids are not going to pick up on that you're going to get. And you're like, oh, yeah, I understood that reference. That's funny. Maybe they'll laugh about it too when they're a little bit older. But overall, this was a fun action-adventure movie. I don't think they're going to actually reboot the Rescue Rangers. But I also feel like this is not necessarily a reboot. Like I mentioned before, the poster said it's not a reboot. It's a comeback story. And I kind of have to agree with that. While it takes things from the original TV show, what made it good, obviously this is a story on its own about friendships and being able to work past some things, while also bringing in new elements to make it its own unique adventure that I feel like most people are going to enjoy. Like I said, this movie is on Disney+, so this is a perfect movie to pause and look for all the different Easter eggs, cameos, references that you might not have initially caught, and I'm going to be certainly happy to find what I missed upon rewatch. Overall, I give Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers a 9 out of 10. So, have you guys gotten to see Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers yet? If you have, what do you think of it? You can follow the show on Facebook and Twitter, where I post updates on shows as well as previews for upcoming episodes. And if you like the show, you want to see more content, make sure to subscribe to the Patreon account. As always, guys, thanks for joining me for this episode. Can't wait to see you on the next one.